computer, and here we go. Okay, so this week's parsha, the parsha name is Mishpatim. Of course, you all know my favorite chumash available is this one, right? And by the way, oh, look at that. Oh my God, that's amazing. Show us again. He did it. He bought one. Okay, that's the best. I'm proud of you. Okay, so this is my favorite chumash. Juan, you should already be able to predict what I'm going to teach today because you have the same book. Okay, it's my favorite chumash. By the way, someone sponsored 2 volumes for the greater rural Georgia community, and I am looking for whom to give them to. So if you know someone who can't afford to buy their own chumash and wants a gift, let me know or let them know that I have one, and I will be glad to meet them and give them a copy. Okay. This week's parsha, Mishpatim, follows from last week's. Last week was called Yisroi. This week is called Mishpatim. Last week, the conversation was all about how, it ends, better said, the conversation ends with the giving of the Torah. This week's conversation continues with not just the Torah, but giving of practical laws, right? And a specific kind of law. Pay attention. It's the law called a mishpat. Mishpat, spelled in English Mishpat, is the logical law. Now, in Torah, there are 3 kinds of laws. There is number 1 is called a choik, C-H-O-K, choik, and choik means it's like an ultimatum. It just is. That's the law, and that's it. Typically, if you're wondering what kind of mitzvah fits into the category of choik, so kosher, keeping kosher, doesn't really have an explanation, even though some people like to say it's better for you, and other people like to say that you are what you eat, and all of these kind of lovely ideas, which, by the way, all feature in Jewish thought. However, none of them are, in fact, the ultimate reason, because the ultimate reason remains unknown to us as a nation. Another one, and one that King Solomon says, and this is recorded somewhere in the Talmud, and I don't know where, maybe it's even in one of the other writings that he has. King Solomon says he understands all the other commandments, but the one that he cannot figure out is Para Aduma, the Red Hafer. Right? This is a phenomenal conversation altogether. It features in the book of Leviticus, somewhere at the end, where in order to purify a person from the impurity of coming in contact with a dead person, you need to get sprinkled with the ashes of a red cow. And if this red cow, has 2 hairs that are not red, it loses its status of red cow. There's so much into this cow that you've got to wonder what's it all about, and there is no explanation known to us. Now, I'm not going to stop you from researching it on your own. Go for it. I'll even help with some resources, but that's generally the end of that conversation. However, that is the choik, or in plural, chokim, l'chaim. Alan, it's water, not tea.
I thought it was vodka.
No, definitely not vodka. Not vodka in public, and not vodka usually. I'm not much of a drinker. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then the next kind of mitzvah is called, we did chokim, the next one is called Eidos. Eidos is testimonial. Testimonial mitzvahs, we'll spell it in English, E-I-D-U-S, Eidos, and it means these are the mitzvahs that Hashem says, please do this because I did something for you, and as testimony to what Hashem did for us as a nation, we will do something back. And so, the easiest one off the top of your head is the 3 festivals of the year: Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos, Passover, the Sukkot, how do you say that in English? I don't know. And Shavuot. These are these are holidays, and each holiday has with it, Hashem says, because I took you out of Egypt, or something like that. The same thing is putting on tefillin every day fits into the category of Eidos. There's the in the paragraph of Shema, you will find the explanation for it, and it's something along the lines of because Hashem took care of us. We wrap ourselves in a talis, right? And that's because Hashem wrapped us up in the clouds on the way in the desert. That's one of the explanations for it. So there you have, and those are the Eidos, the testimonies for things we've done. And finally, there is Mishpatim. Mishpatim are the mitzvahs that have logical explanation. They just make sense. So for example, don't kill. Did you need God to tell you don't kill for you to figure it out? Well, the truth is you did, because your ancestors violated this quite often. Another simple one is maintain a normal family structure. Father, mother, children, engage in relations only with your spouse. Those are just sensible things, right? That, I mean, nowadays it needs to be told. It used to be a secret. It used to be like, the standard, the norm. That said, these are mishpatim, and mishpatim are just logical. Okay, we will come back to this in a bit. Now, so the flow, there's Yisroi, and it flows into mishpatim. Yisroi, the giving of the Torah, flows into the giving of the laws. But there's a moment where the pasha seems to change its direction, where the conversation changes. Where's that moment? If you have a chumash, it's at the end of chapter 23, at the beginning of chapter 24. You will discover there how the conversation was until now all about laws, law, and then from the beginning of chapter 24, you discover that things change. What's the new conversation? It's a preparation for Mount Sinai, a preparation of how to engage with Mount Sinai, a preparation of how to engage with receiving the Torah and the Ten Commandments. And, it culminates with a fantastic sentence, and I'm looking for my source here. It's chapter 24, verse 3. You have how the Jewish people as a nation respond to the inauguration speech of God at the giving of the Torah. They respond, we'll do it. Whatever you say, we're going to do. So what's the issue? Okay, don't guess ahead. The issue is that it's not chronological. This doesn't follow in order. It should go in order, which means that first you talk about how to prepare for Mount Sinai. Then you talk about what happens at Mount Sinai. You get the Ten Commandments, and then you talk about the rest of the commandments. And somewhere in between, we read about Moses going up for 40 days and 40 nights and coming down and then teaching all the rest of the information. Why is there this change of order of content of the Torah? That is the question that we're aiming to answer today. And the key to answering this issue is going to be an understanding of two aspects in our relationship with Hashem. What are the two aspects in our relationship? We have this way that we connect with Hashem as we'll call it a contractual relationship. We have a contract with Hashem. Consider it the commandments. You do the commandments, and you fulfill and you do what Hashem is asking from you. That's a contract-like relationship. And then there is the covenant end of the relationship. Covenant, the Hebrew word, by the way, for covenant is bris. If you are familiar with the term bris, that's good. If you're not familiar with it, we'll call the Moihel, and he will explain to you what a bris is. Okay, bris is a covenant in Hebrew. And typically, the main covenant that we all have is that we are that we're part of the greater community, and that one it's hard to get rid of. But the other, there are actually 10 instances of a bris in I believe in the Torah, and I can't tell you what they all are. Please don't ask, because then you'll be playing Stump the Rabbi and winning. So this is one of the brises is happen, or two of them actually probably happen at Mount Sinai. One of them is a contract. You do this, we'll have this give and take perhaps, and then the other one is a quite eternal relationship with Hashem. Where do we see this eternal relationship with Hashem? Hashem gives us the Torah, and where does the Torah come from? Well, the Torah is actually coming from Hashem's Chachma. So when we use the term Chachma, we've got to explain it. Chachma means wisdom. Where is your wisdom happening? It's in your brain, and it's in a certain area in your brain, right? But all the energy of the body is really funneled through the brain in a way. Even though your heart is the one that distributes the energy, it isn't the one that creates the energy. The brain controls the entire body, and as such, any part of us flows from the brain and forward to anywhere else. So, for example, which part of my body is telling me to fix my glasses, or which part of my body is telling me to stand up? These things happen without even thinking. How do they happen? Why do they happen? Because the brain is passing on this message and saying, go do, go perform, do this action. And the Torah is Hashem's Chachma. It contains his essence. It contains everything of Hashem. So much so that the Tanya, which is the first text of Chabad Hasidus, and the fundamental text tells us in chapter 4 and 5 that learning the Torah, engaging with the Torah, is the closest connection that one can have with Hashem. When you learn Torah, you're wrapping your brain around a very essential point of Hashem, the wisdom with which He allows us to connect with Him. So if I can connect with God's wisdom, I can really connect with the essential point of God. And that is something that you can't take away from the Jew. He has it and he can't lose it. It's that essential relationship that every Jew has. Yet, I still haven't told you, why does the Torah choose to distinguish between these two episodes? So, why do we separate? During the mitzvahs, we need to. So okay, let's say it this way. Why do we separate? The first part of this group of two parshas, Yisroi, and the first part of Mishpatim, is all the contractual stuff. Hashem is telling us in this division that there is a contractual relationship, and that's kind of a give and a take in a way. That's an instructional, do these things area. But then there is another part, and that is the recounting of the giving of the Torah in its second form, which is the end of the parsha of Mishpatim. And that part is telling us there is this essential relationship that a Jew has with Hashem. And then it also includes in it the way that the way that the Jew responds right? Why did the Jewish people respond as a nation to the giving of the Torah with these two classic words? And you can find them, as I said, in chapter 24:3. You find them, it says then, Na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh v'nishma means we will do and we will listen. What's this notion? Who ever heard of a group of people who are approached with a deal or with an offer of engagement, and their response is, we will do what we told. We will do, and we'll just do it. Like, we're not even going to ask you what you want. When the Jewish people take on the Torah, they recognize how Hashem has created the world, how Hashem has made the Torah as a blueprint, as a guidebook on how to exist and how to live through the world. They don't. The people don't need to then gribble sich. They don't have to get involved in the details of the contract to see it doesn't work for me here, it doesn't work for me there. They understand that this whole thing is the best thing for me. They understand that the entire experience is what I need most. And so therefore the Jew is able to say, no, I'll just do it. I'll do it because I know this is really the ultimate and best thing for all of us. And then afterwards, nishma, there has to be the flip side that we'll do, and then we'll understand. And really it comes to tell you something like this, that in performing the mitzvahs, we need to understand them. We need to do them, that's part one, but then we need to understand them. There are religions out there, and I'm not much of I haven't studied many theologies, but there are like religions which are kind of just do it, but there isn't an understanding that follows with it. There isn't a theory that goes along. Every one of the mitzvahs has details to understand, has explanation that one can approach. Every question in Judaism has an answer. So we are instructed and requested of to understand our learning, but at the same time, we're also we also have a mandate of getting it done, and that's the Jews' response to Hashem and to Moshe at the mountain. They say, we will do and we will listen. Na'aseh v'nishma. We're gonna do it. Okay.
Where is that?
Where is
them saying we'll do it?
Chapter 24, verse 3. Right? I'm pretty sure it's there. That's why I saw it earlier today. Yeah, chapter 24, verse 3. I'll read it in Hebrew. Moshe came, and he relates to the nation, Hashem, all of the things that God has told him, Mishpatim, and all of the commandments. Vayan kol ha'am, the entire nation responds, koil echad, with one voice, vayomu, and they say, kol hadvarim, all of these things, all the words, asher diber Hashem, that Hashem said, na'aseh, we will do. So then the question is, where does it say v'nishma? That's a good question. Okay, I have to find where it says the next part, na'aseh v'nishma. Oh, there it is. Okay, I actually gave you the wrong source. Look at that. Go down now. Continue. You can continue reading, but continue on to Zion. Continue on to verse 7. It says, "Vayikach sefer abris." He takes the book of the covenant, which, by the way, what's the book of the covenant? It's the Sefer Torah. Vayikra ba'aznei, and he read it to the people. Does that mean that he read the entire Torah? It's hard to believe. So what is this scroll? You have to look into it.
Well, he really can only read the Torah up to that day, right? So we're only talking about Exodus.
Right.
Up to Exodus.
Yeah. That's what it says. Oh, take a look. Take a look at, okay, you don't have Rashi. Do you have Rashi? If you have Rashi, if you have access to Rashi, It's on verse 4, right? Verse 4 introduces the scroll. It says, "Vayichtav Moshe es kol divrei Hashem, vayashkem vayichtav Moshe es kol divrei Hashem." Moshe writes down everything that Hashem said. So Rashi says, what did he write down? Vayichtav Moshe mi bereshis v'ad matan Torah, from the creation of the world until the point of matan Torah. And he wrote down also the mitzvahs that were told over, all the commandments that were told over during their stop in an area called Morah. What happens next? So I'm taking a look at verse 7 now. It says, "Vayikach Sefer HaBris." He takes this scroll called the Sefer HaBris, which is the book of the covenant, Vayikra ba'oznei ha'am, and he reads it to the people. Vayomru, and then they say, "Kol asher diber Hashem," all that Hashem says, "Na'aseh v'nishma," we will do, and we will learn everything that Hashem has spoken.
So he probably doesn't need to read Genesis, right? All we care about at this point is to tell people what to do. History really isn't the biggest thing at this point, right?
Okay, I think that you need to use more words in what you're saying so that I can understand you properly.
So when we say, he's read all of the Torah to the people, at this point, what the people really need to hear are what the mitzvahs are.
Well, that's what follows. That's
right.
Chronologically, that's what follows.
Right, but I mean, in terms of he doesn't need to go a whole lot further back. Moses doesn't need to read everything. What he really needs to do is to tell them what their obligations are.
Okay,
right?
So I think that what you need to I guess download from here is that you need to catch the date of this occasion. This sentence, chapter 7, verse 7, is actually said on the 5th day of Sivan, which is the day preceding the giving of the Torah. Right, and you see, and that's now we come back to the opening of our whole conversation. Is this is not in order? All these sentences don't feature in order, right? If it was post Mount Sinai, it should have, which is kind of placed in the book post Mount Sinai, but in order of days, it's actually the day before the giving of the Torah. So, Alan, what you were saying just a moment ago, that Moshe doesn't need to read Bereshis, because now he's just got to give over the commandments. So you're right? What he does on the days preceding is that we prepare everybody with a kind of, you could call it hype in a way, to receive the Torah. And then what follows immediately afterwards is, now we're going to tell you the instructions. And so Alan effectively asked the question of today's class, right? Why did we change the order? And the reason, at least I'm going to subjectify. I'm going to see it
subjectively
view Alan's question. Thank you. I'm going to subjectively view Alan's question. Why does the Torah mix up the dates, kind of thing? Usually we should value chronological order, and the answer is because the Torah wants to teach us there's two aspects to our relationship with Hashem. There's the aspect which is the contractual, which we've been saying it's a contract. There's the commandments, do the commandments, perform, and maybe there'll be returns. That, although that's not said here. But then there's the flip part of the relationship, is the part spoken about in this last chapter 24 over here, which really all of chapter 24 happens prior to the giving of the Torah, right? And it's all about our relationship with Hashem as a nation that performs rituals and customs. And so you can actually see throughout this chapter, you've got a whole bunch of different rituals that happen. Number one, they're not allowed to go up the mountain. In verse 2, you can read about that. It says, "V'nigash Moshe levado el Hashem," that Moshe himself goes and approaches Hashem. V'hein lo yigoshu, the nation doesn't go with him. The nation, the people, should not ascend the mountain with him. Right, and then in verse 4, there's reference to the commandment that the people have to separate from their spouses in preparation for the giving of the Torah. Sorry, that was 3. And then there is in verse 5 and 6, there is a sacrifice and a sprinkling of blood on the people so that they're purified, etc. And it continues. And then only afterwards in verse 12, do you discover that now after Mount Sinai, on the 7th day of Sivan, now Hashem tells Moshe, Alei Elai Hahora, come up to me at the mountain, and you'll hang out with me for a while, and I'm going to give you the tablets and the Torah and the commandments which I have written for you to pass on. What does all of this tell me? Okay, hold on. Now we have to finish my prepared content. Okay, so what does all of this tell us? This is why I spoke before about the 3 different styles of commandments. There's the Chukim, the Eidos, and the Mishpatim. These are all different kinds, right? But how do we approach every mitzvah? How do we approach them? Well, some of them are quite logical, right? It makes sense not to kill anybody, and it makes sense to keep, to be honest in business. But would you initially approach this commandment of being honest in business as a God-given commandment? Or would you say it just makes sense? It's the normal thing to do. Well, prior to its instruction, you would have said it's just normal, right? But now that we have a commandment from Hashem, go and do these specific things, now we actually have more than it's just normal. We have a divine energy in it too. And so like this, there used to be a wish. There used to be a wish amongst Hasidim. Hasidim would say we should fulfill the mitzvahs that we have an explanation for with the same devotion, the same way we fulfill the mitzvahs that we have no explanation for, right? So I ask you this rhetorical question: what's the inspiration in fulfilling a mitzvah that you don't have an explanation for? What's your inspo? Well, your inspiration is going to be, I'm doing this out of love for God only. Hashem asked me to do it, and that's it. If your parents would ask you to bring them a cup of water, right, and then they wouldn't drink the cup, right? So you'd wonder, why did you ask me to bring it? You could answer, and it's a bad correlation, but you could answer, well, the parent wanted it because it's a moment of connection. This is something that the child can do for the parent. He can do something for him by bringing him the water. The same thing very differently, like we say, same difference, is when we have a commandment that doesn't make sense. I don't know why I need to do it. I do it because I love Hashem, because I know there's a relationship and Hashem loves me, and I want to reciprocate his love by performing, by doing what he's asked. And so Hasidim used to say we should do the mitzvahs that we understand with the same devotion that we do the ones that we don't understand. Let's do the mitzvah of working honestly, right? Clocking in and out from work honestly, or not overcharging a client because we can, because they're not paying attention anyway, right? Those are things that you could rely on the secular law. But the Jew has a different reason to do it. He does it because for him, this is a relationship with Hashem. Hashem has asked him to keep this commandment. And so therefore he performs this commandment, not because it makes sense, but rather because Hashem has asked him. And this is really the lesson of Mishpatim. We went from the contractual straight into this covenantal relationship to tell us that when we do the contractual actions. We're not doing it because it makes sense. We're doing it because Hashem wants us to do it. And it extends just a bit further into your regular day-to-day life. When you eat and drink, right? It's seemingly like so simple and so irrelevant. But when we eat and drink with intentionality, we're doing it because Hashem wants us to do it. When we have that intention that this is His desire, it's at that point that we're actually connecting with God, even in very simple things. And then we take that simple action that we've done and we lift it up and we bring it towards God in an act of devotion. And so I wish all of us the same wish, the same blessing that in previous generations they would wish. May we merit to do the understandable commandments the same way, with the same intention that we do the harder to understand commandments. L'chaim. And now we open the floor to questions.